Roommate's boyfriend started living in our apartment without my permission and without paying rent, while making a list of rules that I had to follow if I wanted him to move in. I, 19F, live with my roommate, let's call her Ashley, 20F, in a small 2-bedroom apartment near our college campus. We've been friends since sophomore year of high school. We weren't super close back then, but we got along well enough that when we both ended up at the same college, splitting rent seemed like a good idea. Our apartment is just a basic 2-bedroom with a shared bathroom, tiny kitchen, and a living room that barely fits our second-hand couch. The walls are thin, the water pressure sucks, and the neighbors above us sound like they're bowling at 2 a.m., but it's affordable and within walking distance to campus, which is all that matters. When we first moved in together about 8 months ago, things were fine. We both had similar schedules, split the chores pretty evenly, and respected each other's space. I'm not saying we were perfect roommates or anything. I sometimes forget to take out the trash when it's my turn, and she leaves her hair all over the shower drain, but we made it work. Then she started dating Jake, 22M. They met at some party, I wasn't there, I had a paper due, and suddenly he was all she could talk about. Jake this, Jake that. Whatever, I was happy for her. I've had my fair share of relationships that didn't work out, so seeing her excited about someone was nice. I remember the first time she brought him over. It was supposed to be our roommate dinner night, but she texted me last minute asking if Jake could join. I said sure, even though I was kind of annoyed that she changed plans without much notice. But I figured I should meet this guy she was so into. Jake showed up wearing this stupid snapback hat indoors, who does that? And brought a 6-pack of some craft beer I'd never heard of. He spent the first 20 minutes explaining why it was superior to mainstream garbage like I was supposed to be impressed. He seemed okay though, just a bit full of himself. He complimented my cookies, which was nice I guess. At first, Jake would come over maybe once or twice a week. They'd watch movies in the living room or cook dinner together. He seemed decent enough, he'd say hi when he saw me and even helped us hang some shelves once when our DIY attempt went horribly wrong. I didn't really get to know him that well since I was usually either studying in my room or at the library, but he seemed fine. Our apartment has pretty thin walls, so I'd sometimes hear them laughing or talking, but it wasn't a big deal. I just turned up my music or put in earbuds. And yeah, sometimes I'd hear other things too, but that's just part of having a roommate in a relationship. We're all adults here. Then things started to change. It was gradual at first, he'd stay overnight more frequently, then his toothbrush appeared in our bathroom, then some of his clothes started taking up space in our tiny shared closet. Before I knew it, he was there nearly every night, using our shower, eating food that I had bought, playing video games loudly in the living room until 3 a.m., and generally acting like he lived there. I started noticing little things going missing too. Like my good phone charger would mysteriously end up in Ashley's room. Or the expensive coffee I splurged on would suddenly be almost empty when I could have sworn I'd only used it a few times. One time, my favorite mug was left in the sink with what looked like dried ramen stuck to the inside. I don't even eat ramen. The worst part? He wasn't contributing a single penny to rent, utilities, or groceries. I tried to be cool about it at first. I get it, relationships are exciting, and it's nice to spend time together. But after about 2 months of this bullshit, I started to get annoyed. Our electricity bill went up, probably because he's constantly charging his gaming equipment, our water bill increased, and our grocery expenses nearly doubled. Those roommate dinner nights? Completely gone. Now it was just me eating microwave meals in my room while they took over the kitchen and living room. I'd come home from a long day of classes, and Jake would be sprawled out on the couch watching sports or playing video games, with his shoes on the coffee table, gross, and empty snack bags scattered around. And half the time, Ashley wasn't even there. She'd be at class or work, and he'd just be hanging out in our apartment like it was his personal man cave. I brought it up to Ashley one morning when Jake wasn't around. I just mentioned that since he was staying over so much, maybe he could chip in for utilities or groceries. She got all defensive and said he was just visiting and that it wasn't a big deal. She said something like, he doesn't even use that much electricity, which was complete BS. I dropped it to avoid an argument, but it kept bothering me. A few weeks later, I tried again. This time, I showed her the utility bills from before Jake started staying over compared to now. There was like a $40 difference in electricity alone. I wasn't trying to be petty, but I'm a broke college student and every dollar counts. She reluctantly agreed that maybe he could contribute a little to utilities, but then never actually followed through. Another month went by, and the situation got worse. Jake was now keeping some of his gaming equipment permanently set up in our living room. He'd have friends over while Ashley was in class, eating our food and making a mess that he never cleaned up. They'd be so loud I couldn't concentrate on my assignments, even with my door closed and music playing. He'd use my expensive shampoo without asking and leave the cap off so it spilled everywhere. I started hiding my good toiletries in my room, which was ridiculous. I shouldn't have to hide my stuff in my own apartment. He even had the audacity to complain about the Wi-Fi speed and suggested we upgrade, as if I'm going to pay more for his gaming habits. Our living room started to look like a frat house. There were always empty pizza boxes and beer cans on the coffee table, controller wires tangled everywhere, and this weird smell that I couldn't quite identify but definitely didn't like. I found myself spending more and more time at the library or at my friend's place just to escape the mess. One time, I came home to find Jake had rearranged our furniture to optimize gaming space. He'd pushed our bookshelf into the corner and moved the couch against the wall. When I asked why he felt entitled to rearrange our apartment without asking, he just shrugged and said, "It looks better this way." Ashley backed him up, saying it opened up the space. I felt like I was living in crazy town. I finally had enough when I came home from a late study session to find Jake and 3 of his friends sprawled across our living room, empty pizza boxes and beer cans everywhere, playing some shooting game at full volume at 1 a.m. Ashley was asleep in her room, completely oblivious. I had an 8 a.m. class the next day and just wanted to sleep. I asked them to please keep it down, and one of Jake's friends had the nerve to say, "Chill out, we're almost done with this round." They barely lowered the volume, and I could hear them making fun of me as I went to my room. I was seething but too tired to argue. The next day, I sat Ashley down and told her straight up that Jake either needed to start paying his share or stop practically living here. I wasn't trying to be a bitch about it, but it wasn't fair that I was essentially subsidizing his lifestyle. I explained that I signed up to live with her, not with her and her boyfriend. I mentioned that he was there even when she wasn't, which made me uncomfortable. She seemed surprised that I was upset, seriously? But eventually apologized and said she'd talk to him about it. She promised they'd be more considerate and that Jake would start chipping in for groceries and utilities. I thought that was the end of it. For a few days, things seemed a bit better. Jake wasn't there every single night, and when he was, they kept the noise down. Ashley even bought toilet paper for once. Wow, amazing. I started to think maybe we'd work things out. Then one evening, I was in the kitchen making a sandwich when Jake walked in. He opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, one of mine, by the way, and leaned against the counter watching me. It was kind of weird, and I was getting uncomfortable with the silence, so I just said something generic like, "How's it going?" That's when he launched into this whole speech about how he was thinking of officially moving in since he was there so much anyway. He said it would be more efficient for everyone. I was caught off guard and just mumbled something non-committal, but inside I was panicking. There was no way I wanted to live with this guy full time. Fast forward to last week. I was getting ready to head out to a late night study group when Jake cornered me in the kitchen. And I mean literally cornered me. He stood between me and the door, arms crossed, looking all serious and shit. At first, I thought maybe Ashley had talked to him and he was going to apologize or offer to pay for something. Boy, was I wrong. He told me he wanted to test me to see if I'd be a good person to live with full time. I was confused and asked what he meant. He said that if I wanted him to pay rent, I had to prove I was roommate material by showing I could handle sharing the space with someone like him. Then this asshole pulled out his phone and showed me an actual list of rules he'd want me to follow if he officially moved in. Some of the highlights: doing my share of the cooking, even though I already make my own meals and he's the one eating our food without contributing, not bringing any guys over, I'm single, but why is that even relevant? Being respectful of his gaming time by keeping the Wi-Fi free during his streams. Cleaning the bathroom weekly, I already do this, not using the living room when he has friends over. Keeping noise down during the day because he sometimes sleeps until noon, while I'm supposed to what, tiptoe around my own apartment? Asking permission before having friends over. Not using the washing machine on weekends because that's when he does his laundry. Getting his approval before buying any new furniture or decor for the common areas. The list went on, each point more ridiculous than the last. He even had the nerve to say I needed to earn his trust after I'd shown hostility toward him. Hostility? You mean asking him to respect my space and pay for what he uses? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This guy, who has been freeloading off us for months, had the audacity to give me rules for my apartment. I laughed in his face and told him there was no way he was moving in. I said if he wanted to live here, he'd need to pay a third of everything, follow our existing apartment rules, and actually clean up after himself for once. He got all red in the face and stormed out. I thought that was it, but oh no, it got worse. The next day, Ashley confronted me. Apparently, Jake had gone to her with some twisted version of our conversation, claiming I had been hostile and unwelcoming when he tried to discuss moving in. She said Jake was just testing the waters and that I should have been more open to the idea. She said they'd been talking about living together for a while now, and since our lease renewal was coming up in a few months, they thought it would be perfect timing. She never once considered that maybe she should have discussed this with me first, her actual roommate who's on the lease. Then came the part that really hurt. She accused me of being jealous because I'm single and suggested I was trying to sabotage their relationship. She said that I've been difficult ever since she started dating Jake and that maybe I had feelings for him or something. Now she's saying if I can't be supportive, then maybe she should get a new roommate, one who respects her relationship. I was completely blindsided. Ashley and I have been friends for years, and suddenly she's taking this guy's side over mine? I tried to explain my perspective again, but she wasn't listening. She was just repeating the same bullshit Jake had probably fed her. The next few days were super awkward. Ashley and I barely spoke, and when Jake was over, he'd give me these smug looks like he'd won something. I started spending even more time away from the apartment, crashing at friends' place or staying late at the library until I knew they'd be asleep. What's even more frustrating is that some of our mutual friends are now involved. Ashley must have been talking to them because a couple of her friends messaged me saying I was being selfish and controlling. One even suggested that I should be grateful that Jake helps out around the apartment sometimes. He hung one shelf, months ago. Another friend tried to convince me that three-way splits on rent are always better, so I should be thanking Jake for offering to move in. Except he wasn't offering to pay a full third, he was expecting a discount since he and Ashley would be sharing a room. So basically, he wanted all the benefits of living here while paying less than me. How is that fair? I've tried talking to other friends about it, but most of them are mutual friends with Ashley, so they're either taking her side or trying to stay neutral. My only friend who I talk to is the only one who fully has my back, and she thinks Jake is a total leech. At least someone sees the situation clearly. I think this is completely insane. So, Ida for refusing to let him move in after his ridiculous test and for wanting him to pay his fair share if he's going to be here all the time? Update 1. Hi everyone, it's been a wild ride since my original post, and I wanted to give an update because a lot has happened. I can't believe this post got so much attention. I was just venting, but I guess a lot of people have dealt with shitty roommate situations. First off, I want to thank everyone who commented. It helped me see things in a completely new light. Honestly, I didn't even realize how much I was being gaslighted by Jake and Ashley until I read some of your insights. I thought they were kind of my friends, but now I see how manipulative and toxic their behavior really is. Some of you suggested I was being too nice, and yeah, looking back, I probably was. I kept making excuses for Ashley because we've been friends for so long, but that doesn't justify how she's been treating me. Maybe I was afraid of confrontation, or maybe I just didn't want to believe that someone I considered a friend could treat me like this. For those asking if I've tried sitting down with both of them to talk, yes, I did try. The day after I posted, I suggested we all have a house meeting to discuss the living situation. Ashley seemed hesitant but agreed. Jake, however, refused to participate, saying it was between the leaseholders and that I was trying to gang up on him or whatever. Real mature. Ashley and I ended up talking alone, and I tried again to explain my concerns. I showed her the utilities bills, the grocery receipts, even photos I'd taken of the messes Jake had left. I thought maybe with concrete evidence, she'd understand where I was coming from. But she just got defensive again, saying I was nickeling and diming their relationship and that I should be more flexible. When I brought up Jake's test and his list of rules, she claimed he was just joking and that I had misinterpreted what he meant. She said he has an unusual sense of humor that takes time to get used to. Except he wasn't laughing when he showed me that list, he was dead serious. Maybe I just hated the thought of not having any friends, but who needs enemies with these kind of friends? NGL, it still breaks my heart to realize this and I cried a lot. But that doesn't change anything, haha. I don't know why I'm saying this, it's just been a really emotional days, please forgive my rant. To answer some questions, yes, we both signed the lease. No, Jake isn't on it. Yes, I've been documenting everything. And no, I haven't been able to talk to the landlord yet because they're notoriously hard to reach. They own like 20 properties and barely respond to maintenance requests, let alone roommate drama. Anyway, things have gotten worse since I posted. Jake has gone full victim mode. He's been telling Ashley's friends that I'm trying to kick him out of his girlfriend's apartment. He's been painting me as some controlling, jealous monster who can't handle his straightforward personality. Meanwhile, Ashley is eating it up and defending him, saying I'm overreacting and causing unnecessary drama. Last weekend was particularly bad. Jake decided to host a small get-together at our apartment without even asking me. I came home from visiting my parents to find about 15 people crammed into our tiny living room, music blasting, alcohol everywhere. It was a complete mess. Someone had spilled red wine on our carpet, there were cigarette butts on our balcony, we're not supposed to smoke there, and the bathroom was disgusting. When I complained to Ashley the next day, she acted like I was being unreasonable for not wanting strangers in our apartment without warning. She said, "It's my place too, and I can have friends over if I want." Except many of these people weren't even her friends, they were Jake's buddies that I'd never met before. I spent 3 hours cleaning up their mess because neither Ashley nor Jake bothered to do it. I even had to use my own money to buy carpet cleaner for the wine stain. When I asked Ashley to reimburse me, she rolled her eyes and said, "It's just a few dollars, why are you being so petty?" The other day, I came home to find Jake sitting on our couch, playing games on our TV, eating food that I'm pretty sure I bought, acting like he owns the place. When I walked in, he barely acknowledged me, just gave this little smirk like he knew he was getting under my skin. I went straight to my room because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me upset. I've started keeping all my food in my room, which is ridiculous because we don't have a mini fridge, so I can only keep non-perishables. I bought a lockbox for my toiletries and started keeping track of when I use certain items so I can tell if they've been used while I'm gone. I know it sounds paranoid, but I'm tired of my stuff disappearing or being used without permission. What's worse is that I've started noticing just how much control Jake has over Ashley. She's completely bought into his narrative and is now acting like I'm the enemy. For example, she told me last night that my attitude is making it hard for them to feel comfortable in their own home. Their home. This apartment is 50% mine, but suddenly, I'm being treated like an unwelcome guest. It's like she can't make a decision without consulting him first. The other day, I asked if she wanted to grab coffee between classes, something we used to do all the time, and she said she needed to check with Jake to make sure he didn't need the car. Since when does he have a say in her schedule? Since when does he get priority use of her car? I've also noticed that she's been skipping some of her classes to hang out with him, which isn't like her at all. She used to be really focused on her studies. Now she's always saying things like, "It's just one class, it's not a big deal." I'm worried about her, but every time I try to express concern, she accuses me of trying to control her. I've tried reasoning with her, reminding her of how things used to be before Jake was in the picture, but it's like talking to a wall. She just repeats whatever bullshit he's been feeding her. It's honestly sad to see how much she's changed. The Ashley I knew was independent, driven, and wouldn't let anyone walk all over her. Now she's like Jake's personal cheerleader, defending his every action. Some of you suggested that I might be in danger, and while I don't think Jake would ever get physical, I have started taking precautions. I always lock my bedroom door when I'm not home or when I'm sleeping. I've also made copies of all our important documents, lease, utility bills, etc., and stored them at my parents' house, just in case. I'm starting to reach out to my landlord, I pray he responds. Most leases have clauses about long-term guests, and Jake has definitely overstayed his. I'm also going to start looking for a new place to live, just in case things go south. I don't want to leave my apartment, but I also don't want to live with people who clearly don't respect me. I'm also considering whether it's worth talking to Jake's actual roommates. From what I've gathered, he has his own apartment with 2 other guys, but he's barely there anymore. I wonder if they know he's basically moved in with us. Maybe they're even looking for someone to take over his portion of the rent, though I wouldn't wish him as a roommate on anyone. My friend has offered to let me crash at her place if things get really bad, which is a relief. At least I have somewhere to go if the situation becomes unbearable. She also suggested I talk to my academic advisor about the situation, as some colleges have resources for students dealing with housing issues. I might look into that. As for Ashley, I don't know if there's any saving our friendship. I'm heartbroken because I thought she cared about me, but now I realize she's supporting Jake's abusive behavior. I've tried to reach out to some of our other friends to explain my side, but many of them have already formed their opinions based on what Jake and Ashley have told them. A few have started to see through the BS, though. Thank you to everyone who opened my eyes to what was really happening. I'll post another update once I've spoken to my landlord and taken further action. Also, I really want to thank you for just caring and being there. This is what I needed to hear, and you all were honest and fair with me. I am very grateful for the support I got that I couldn't get anywhere else. So thank you. Update 2. Hi everyone. I wanted to come back with a final update now that everything has been resolved. It's been a hectic, but I can finally say that I'm in a much better place, and I'm so grateful to everyone who supported me along the way. So much has happened since my last update, I don't even know where to begin. I guess I should start with the landlord situation, since that's what most people were curious about. After gathering all my evidence, I finally managed to get hold of my landlord. I was super nervous about the call because our landlord isn't exactly the most understanding person, but I knew I had to do something. The day before I called, Jake had taken things to a new level. I found out he had been using my laptop when I wasn't home. I had recently bought it and it had no passwords while I forgot to keep it in my room. I only discovered this because he'd left a browser tab open to his email. When I confronted Ashley about it, she said he needed to submit a job application and his laptop was acting up. She didn't see the problem with letting him use my things without asking. That was the final straw for me. I explained the situation to my landlord as calmly as I could, that my roommate's boyfriend had essentially moved in without permission, wasn't paying any rent or utilities, and was creating a hostile living environment. I made sure to mention that this was a violation of our lease agreement, which specifically states that guests can't stay more than 7 consecutive days without approval. To my surprise, the landlord was actually pretty understanding. Turns out, Jake had violated the guest policy in our lease by staying over so often. The landlord was firm. Jake couldn't stay overnight anymore, and if Ashley wanted to add him to the lease, we'd need to renegotiate everything, including his share of the rent and utilities. Plus, they'd need to run a background check on him and everything, which would take time and cost money. The landlord said they'd send an official notice about the guest policy, so it wouldn't seem like it was coming directly from me. I was relieved because I didn't want to face even more backlash from Ashley and Jake. In the meantime, I talked to my friends about potentially finding a new place together when my lease was up. I figured it would be good to have a backup plan in case things didn't improve. They were both on board, and we even started looking at some 3-bedroom apartments in the area. When the notice arrived a few days later, Ashley was pissed. She stormed into my room, waving the paper around, accusing me of going behind her back and trying to get Jake kicked out. She didn't even consider that maybe she was in the wrong for having someone basically live there rent-free. She accused me of trying to sabotage her relationship and even said I was acting petty. She said things like, "I thought we were friends and I can't believe you would do this to me," completely ignoring the fact that she was the one who had been disrespecting our living arrangement for months. I stayed calm, somehow, and reminded her that the lease is clear about guest policies, and that all I wanted was for Jake to either start contributing financially or stop treating our apartment like his personal crash pad. I told her that she could either follow the rules or find a new place to live with Jake, her choice. She stormed out, and I didn't see her for a couple of days. I think she stayed at Jake's place, which made me wonder why he was always at our apartment if he had his own place, but whatever. During those few days, I took the opportunity to reclaim the common spaces. I deep cleaned the apartment, rearranged the furniture back to how it was before Jake moved everything, and even treated myself to some new throw pillows for the couch. It felt good to make the space mine again, even if it was temporary. I also changed my Wi-Fi password. I'm the one who set it up and pay for it anyway. But then something unexpected happened. When Ashley came back, she seemed different. More subdued. She asked if we could talk, and to my surprise, she apologized. She admitted that she had been blinded by her feelings for Jake and hadn't considered how unfair her actions were. She said she needed to reevaluate things with him and asked for some space to think. I was skeptical at first. This seemed like a sudden change of heart after months of defending Jake. But she seemed genuinely remorseful, so I agreed to give her time to figure things out. Over the next week, Jake stopped coming over. I didn't ask questions, I was just relieved to have my apartment back. Ashley and I were walking on eggshells around each other, but at least the tension had decreased somewhat. I later found out from one of my friends that during those few days Ashley stayed with Jake, she had seen a side of him she hadn't witnessed before. Apparently, he'd gotten angry when she suggested possibly adding him to our lease officially and paying rent. He'd thrown a fit about how he shouldn't have to pay to spend time with his girlfriend and how I was turning her against him. My friend said Ashley was pretty shaken by his reaction. Then, about a week later, Ashley and I had a long, heartfelt conversation. For the first time in months, it felt like I was talking to my old friend again. She told me that after the landlord notice, she and Jake had gotten into a huge argument. Apparently, when she asked him to start contributing financially if he wanted to stay over so often, he completely flipped out. He accused her of choosing me over him and said some really nasty things about both of us. She said that his reaction made her realize that maybe he wasn't the person she thought he was. She started noticing other red flags too, how he would subtly put her down, how he expected her to pay for everything, how he tried to isolate her from her friends. She mentioned that he'd even started checking her phone when she wasn't looking, which was a huge violation of her privacy. One revelation that particularly disturbed her was finding out that Jake had lied about his living situation. He'd told her he was having roommate problems and that's why he spent so much time at our place. But when she went to his apartment to get some space, she discovered that his roommates barely knew him because he was never there. They told her he'd been using our apartment as an excuse to avoid paying his own rent. He was basically pulling the same stunt with them as he was with us. And here's the best part, Ashley broke up with Jake. She realized he was manipulative and toxic, not just to me but to her as well. She thanked me for standing my ground and helping her see the situation clearly. She even apologized for accusing me of being jealous and for letting him use my laptop without permission. Of course, Jake didn't take the breakup well. He's been spreading rumors about Ashley now too, telling people she's mentally unstable and that she led him on. There was one last dramatic episode. Jake showed up at our apartment unannounced, clearly drunk, demanding to see Ashley. She wasn't home, but I was. I refused to let him in and threatened to call police if he didn't leave. He started yelling and banging on the door, attracting the attention of our neighbors. Thankfully, one of them must have called police because they showed up within minutes and escorted Jake away. I filed a report about the incident, just in case. After that, we didn't hear from Jake anymore. Ashley blocked him on everything, and I did the same. I heard from mutual friends that he moved back home with his parents after getting evicted from his own apartment for not paying rent. Can't say I'm surprised. We're still working on rebuilding our friendship, but things feel so much lighter now that he's out of the picture. Our lease is up in a few months, and we're actually talking about renewing it. Ashley has really changed. She's more thoughtful, more respectful of my space, and more like the friend I used to know. She's focusing on her studies again and reconnecting with friends she neglected during her relationship with Jake. To those who suggested I find a new place with different roommates, I appreciate the advice, and I did consider it. My friends and I looked at some apartments, but ultimately, I decided to give my friendship with Ashley another chance. People make mistakes, and she seems genuinely sorry for hers. That said, I haven't canceled my backup plan entirely. If things change again, I know I have options. I know not every story ends this way, but I'm so grateful mine did. Thank you to everyone who encouraged me to stand up for myself. It made all the difference. Without you I would be living in hell now.